I found myself angry that this was a mystery. This shouldn't be a mystery.
Welcome to Supernormalized, the podcast where we challenge the conventional, break boundaries, and normalize the supernatural. Join me, CJ, as we explore uncharted realms of existence and unravel the mysteries of the universe. If you have an unusual knowledge or a unique story you'd love to share, reach out to me directly at supernormalized@proton.me. Let's make the supernatural the new normal. Today, I'm interviewing Tina Erwin, a passionate ghost helper on a mission to empower the living to assist the departed. Tina's expertise in metaphysics, showcased through her 8 books, stems from her deep curiosity about the unseen world. Ghosts are irresistibly drawn to Tina, sharing their stories and seeking her guidance to cross over. With a background in the Navy and a master's degree in business and management, Tina brings a unique perspective to her work. Dear listener, I truly appreciate your company on this audio journey. And if you've been enjoying Supernormalized, I kindly ask you for your support in reaching more curious minds just like yours. Please take a moment to give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Your rating will help us gain visibility and show the algorithms that this conversation and these conversations are worth sharing. Share your love for the show with your friends also and let them know how much you enjoy Supernormalized. Thank you for your support. Welcome to Supernormalized, Tina.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here.
Excellent. So, Tina, what started you on this path? Because I mean, that's such a huge job. From my understanding, to actually help spirits to cross over. I mean, you must have had something happen to you to make you want to start doing this.
Well, I didn't understand what happened when people died. I remember as a little kid, being told that energy is neither created nor destroyed. So being somewhat irritating, I said, so what happens when you die? Where does the energy that's us go?
Yes.
And I got into trouble for that. But, getting into trouble just means that you're asking an uncomfortable question. So I started to study everything I could about death and the afterlife, including some truly astounding authors at the turn of the from the 1800s to the 19th century to the 20th century. C.W. Ledbetter and Annie Besant and Alice Bailey and Madame Blavatsky and began to study, and I'm been pretty psychic from an early age.
Yeah.
But it didn't kick in until it didn't really start hitting me constantly till I met my husband, my first day at my first duty station in the Navy. And then it was just one thing after the other. And we had only been married less than a year when my husband spent 42 years at sea. He's also a naval officer.
Yeah.
And I felt this cloud come over me, and it's a very long story, so I'll condense it. But I felt like a woman died, and she looked like me. She was roughly my age. And over time, I put some pieces together. We must have been a very similar frequency, or our vibrations were similar. So you have a resonance between us, and she decided she didn't want to be dead. She wanted my life. So she attempted possession.
Oh, God.
And this is extremely rare. I will make sure I put that little caveat in there.
Yes.
But it happened to me, and I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't understand what it was. I knew somebody died, but I called my family and nobody died, thank goodness. But I didn't know what to do with this. And, I didn't know my husband for very long. We met in March, we eloped in October, and he spent most of that time at sea. So he didn't quite know what to do with me. And this went on for a whole evening, and I got more and more terrified, and he could see her face cross my face.
Wow.
And he became pretty, he started out unnerved, and then he began to be alarmed. I'm not going to say my husband was afraid, because I don't believe at any point in time he was afraid. He is a very left-brained engineer, but he's a kind man. I've been still married to him 50 years later.
Yes.
And he said, I have an idea. And he came back downstairs with a Bible that I think the Navy gave him. And he sat me on his lap and he put his arms around me. And he said the 23rd Psalm over and over and over. And this kind, deep, loving, reassuring voice. And I began to feel her let go of me. And all of a sudden, I was alone in my body again. And, I said prayers for her. But in 1973, I didn't know, 73, 74, I didn't know how to cross a ghost over. And no matter what I read, nobody else did either. And
right.
I found myself angry that this was a mystery. This shouldn't be a mystery. You shouldn't have to study occult books for 50 years to figure out how to do this. There's something wrong with the system. And you shouldn't have to belong to a specific faith or believe or not believe. This is going to happen to every single one of us. We need to know what to do. And through years and years of study and trying to understand it, and I have tons and tons of ghost stories. I had someone try to kill me psychically. After I retired from the Navy after 20 years, and I did all these different things, but I discovered my psychic ability has now gone to greater and greater levels. And through a series of events, I discovered that I could remote view. Well, that's life-changing. If you can see through walls and doors, if you can see into the fourth dimension, that's absolutely going to change your view of everything.
Yes.
And that means that you can see the ghosts, and then you can hear them, and then you still have to decide what to do with them. And I learned how to repel the guy who was trying to stop me from doing what I was going to be doing. And when I learned to do that, I'm sending the energy back to him, and he died. He was practicing black magic, which exists. He died, and I could see him leave his body. And my brother was with me, and he said, we have to help him cross over. And I said, great. I don't know how to do that. And so we invited an angel in. And as we opened our hearts to him, even though this man had done something terrible or attempted to do something terrible, he wasn't mine to judge, which is a really important point.
Yes.
Because you can't do this work if you feel like you're deciding who should cross over and who shouldn't. And as we made those decisions to be of spiritual service, it's like this rock rolled away and this crescent of light shone. And it was astounding. It was a life-changing moment. And I had the angel escort him, and all these dark beings were coming at him. But once the angel showed up, they backed off, and the angel took him to the heaven world. And then it was over, and I was at peace. It was an amazing moment. And when that happened, I realized that other people need to know how to do this. It can't just be me. And then I got called, I was on call constantly to help people with dead relatives, the real estate agents who thinks the house is haunted, the sale won't close, or, it's a Revolutionary War, you're walking through a graveyard and all these ghosts are coming at you. And I'm now crossing them over faster and faster and faster. So consequently, what happened was in 2012, I dropped my iPhone, and I went to the Apple store to get it repaired, but I was early, so I crossed the mall and went into a high-end handbag store. Well, I'm not going to spend $1,000 on a handbag. But I was talking to the ladies in my first ghost story book, Ghost Stories from the Ghost Point of View, Volume 1 had just come out.
Yeah.
And I got to talking to them and they said, "Are you a psychic?" And I said, "Yeah, every day." And she said, "Do you know how haunted this store is?" And I said, "No, I have no idea how haunted is the store." She said, "No one wants to open this high-end, I won't name the designer, handbag store is so haunted. No one wants to come here. The racks move. We feel somebody's watching us. Can you clear the store?" So I said, "Sure." So I cleared the store, crossed them over, and there were two ladies who shopped till they dropped and came back and kept shopping.
Oh,
And a lot of homeless men who love watching women.
right.
And I crossed them over and I said, "So tell me how this is," because I knew the homeless would be back because behind the mall, there were many homeless encampments. This was in San Diego. And so I ended up talking to the manager and I said, "Look, I'm going to attempt to write a crossing over prayer. And I'm going to ask you to beta test it because I cannot be the only one who knows how to do that. There's something arrogant about that. This should be shared with anyone who wants to know." And so I sat down and wrote the prayer, tweaked it a little bit, and she beta tested it. And then I was doing a lot of radio in 2012, and I had a show host in Belgium walk through the battlefields of Belgium saying the crossing over prayer, and hearing these thank yous, these pats on his arm and these thank yous. He would do it for hours and hours and hours. And he said, "I got to tell you, this works." And people started using it when their children would see ghosts. And so that's how the crossing over prayer came to be. And I included it in the ghost story books because I revised those books. And I have a book out called The Crossing Over Prayer Book. And it is 88 prayers to help the living and the dead, including prayers regarding suicide. What prayer can you say if a child dies? How to cross over someone who is murdered or a murderer. If you don't have this book, the crossing over prayer will work. But if you don't know the crossing over prayer, ask for an angel to take that soul to the heaven world right now. It can be that simple. If you're a person of faith and you read the Bible, read the 23rd Psalm. Whatever method you use, it's your service to the dead, and it's huge.
So I've got your crossing over prayer here. Could you read it for us? Do you have that available?
I do.
Yeah, because
I don't need to use it, so I have to read it. I've written so many prayers. So, all right, here is the crossing over prayer. Dearest Lord above, I humbly request that you take any and all souls who have found my divine light of service into the heaven world right now. I ask that an angel wrap each soul in a blanket of healing light right now. I pray that every single soul will use the light bridge provided by my angelic team to transition into the heaven world right now. I send love and healing to all souls, no matter how they died, no matter their level of guilt, without any judgment or prejudice whatsoever, right now. May the light of your love, Father, embrace and keep all of these souls now and forever. Amen.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure people will really feel the energy in that it is a healing moment for that spirit, and it would actually assist with the engagement of the change for them into moving into the light, moving towards reintegration with spirit, pure spirit.
Absolutely. And a lot of people think that a ghost has unfinished business. But many times what happens is the person doesn't know they're dead.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is an astounding concept. And one of my favorite examples is my brother was a contract negotiator for the Screen Actors Guild in Hollywood. And I got a frantic call from him one evening, and he said, I'm just so upset. I can't do it myself. Can you cross over this producer? Her car broke down and she was sideswiped on an LA freeway. Can you cross her over? She doesn't know she's died. It's like, oh, okay, sure, I'll be glad to. Poor thing. So I found her, and it's dark where she is. And she's trying to get what she thinks she's holding as a cell phone to work. And she's trying to talk to the cop, and nobody can hear her. And she's becoming increasingly angry,
agitated, yeah,
and agitated, and she says, "Oh my gosh, wow, you look a little strange, but I don't know who you are. But look, I have got to get home. I have got to talk to my husband." And I said, "I don't think you're going to be talking to your husband. I hate to be the one to have to tell you this, but you have died in this accident. And in the meantime, I bring in an angel to stand by her." And she goes, "Oh, no, 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 no. I can't be dead. Oh, no. I have a meeting with Paramount next week. I've got a birthday party for my daughter on Saturday. I'm getting my nails done tomorrow. I cannot be dead." I said, "You're not going to meet with Paramount, and your daughter's going to have her saddest birthday ever, unfortunately, and you're not getting your nails done. You have died. And I brought this angel in for you. And we've got this beautiful healing blanket we're putting around your shoulders. Do you feel that?" And this look of shock just descends, and the reality that all that she knows is over, and she crosses over, and he called me back and he said, "I can feel she's gone." Oh, thank you. I was so concerned for her. And I see this over and over. Guy at a car accident. He just misjudged it, hit a telephone pole. And he went to pick up ice cream. And the ice cream's melting in the front seat, and he's mad at the cop. He has no idea he's dead. Or a child. My grandson is screaming. He's 11 months old, and he was screaming. And my son calls and said, "I think there's somebody here because Jack's screaming." And we've never heard this sound come out of him before. It's very unusual.
Yeah.
Sure as a devil, there was a little girl who's 7 years old. She followed my Jack's sister, who was in school. She followed her home. And I saw her there. And she liked to sort of stick psychic pins into Jack. And he was screaming because it was painful. So I said, "Hi, sweetie, what are you doing?" And she said, "Nobody will listen to me, and I'm mad." I said, "I can imagine you're mad. And Mommy just cries and cries, and she won't talk to me, and I'm mad." I said, "I am so sorry, sweetie. Can you tell me the last thing you remember?" She said, I was swinging so high." And I said, "Did you let go so you could fly?" And she said, "Yes. And then I'm standing next to Mommy, and she's crying, and I don't understand." So I brought in a child angel to stand with her and crossed her over. And Jack stopped screaming and went to sleep.
Right.
So it's really quite it is so effective when you can cross them over.
Yeah. So it seems like the common stuck ones are from sudden accidents. Is this what happens mainly?
It's sudden accidents. I have cleared Revolutionary War soldiers, Civil War soldiers. They are in the heat of battle, and they can't see the bullets in their bodies. They don't feel the pain. They are so packed with adrenaline for the battle at hand that they don't understand that they're dead. So consequently, you have to inform them. And then you mean, how long have I been fighting here? 171 years or 500 years, if I was in Europe, I was in Rome or something. Really? Or 1,000 years? I'm so sorry. And the suicides are among the hardest because they're always so sorry. And it breaks your heart when you talk to them. They thought it would be so much better on the other side, and it's not. It's terrible for them on the other side. And that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
The other difficult ones are the people who commit murder.
Right.
When you cross over a person who has been murdered, When a person is murdered, their frequency drops dramatically. Just like a person who takes their own life, their frequency is really, really, really low. It's the lowest of the low because it is violence against oneself. But when a person is murdered, there's the shock, the horror, and the rage that goes with it. If you cross them over, you immediately can request healing, special healing on the other side. They're going to get it anyway, but it makes me feel like I'm being more helpful if I can make a request that this soul who died such a traumatic death receives special healing in what's called the Love and Charity Hospital of the Superior Astral Realm, so that they can have much greater sense of healing for them. Because a lot of people know their murderers life after life, and then they reincarnate and they have never received the benefit of the light of the divine. Murderers murder the same victims life after life. I've done enough past life regressions with people. That murderer murdered that same woman over and over and over and over. Right. And they never crossed over, either of them. If you cross them both over, then that ghost, the murderer, doesn't haunt the murdered. And that murderer doesn't haunt the family.
Right. So it breaks the cycle.
It breaks the cycle. One of the most chilling examples I had of this was a man, a client in upstate New York, who was a single mom with a 4-year-old girl. Her father was executed under New York law for murder. He killed many, many different people. Right. But he was haunting his daughter. And he was telling her to murder her daughter, her 4-year-old. The grandfather was telling the daughter to murder his granddaughter. The horrific part of this was the 4-year-old could hear her grandfather saying those things. You can't make this up.
Yeah.
And she said, "Will you cross him over for me?" And I said, "Yes, I can do it. But it's going to be much more meaningful if you do it and you take your power back from this man who has made your life miserable on so many levels. And you need to take your power back from him. And if you cross him over, then in that moment, you will have had the power to do something amazing that will help you, your daughter, as well as your father, because pieces of his soul have been shaved off for we don't know how long." In the 23rd Psalm, it says, "He restoreth my soul." If you're a murderer, your soul will never be restored if you aren't crossed over. And once she did it, and she was successful, she just kept saying this prayer over and over and over. And finally, her little girl looked at her and said, "Mommy, the bad man is gone now." There was her validation, even though she could feel it. Mm-hmm. So how does somebody who's living this nightmare tell somebody who won't think that they're crazy? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. A lot of this stuff, it's for people that haven't experienced anything like it, it seems quite out there. But when you've had experiences and been touched by spirits and angels, all these things are normal. And that's pretty much the bottom line of my podcast, is to make these things more normal for everyone so they understand and can help spirits do the things that they need to do as well. So yeah, all power to you. This is really, really good. So what are the really good stories that you've been through with people? I mean, you've had a lot of intense ones, but there's got to be some good ones there that where the spirits were extremely grateful to be helped, or were quirky spirits that suddenly were like, "Oh, well, this is great," and off they go. Do you have any stories like that?
Well, I actually have 63 of them that I wrote in Ghost Stories from the Ghost Point of View. Okay. I do. I have a 3-volume set, Ghost Stories from the Ghost Point of View. Uh-huh. But some of them, every person's death is as unique as that person's personality. And one of the really fascinating stories took place in Flagstaff, Arizona. It was a snowy night. I used to take a vacation every year with my brothers. We would go to Monument Valley and we would meet from different parts, and we would meet in Flagstaff, and then we would drive in, and the next day we'd move on to Monument Valley, which is an awesome place. A lot of red rock, which I know that Australia certainly has that too. And so we're having this, and it was Christmas time, and it was snowing. It was so beautiful. We had a wonderful evening, and we're walking back to the hotel in the snow, and I felt like someone hit my chest with a brick. And I couldn't breathe. I felt like I didn't know what I was going to do, and I knew there was somebody there. So my brothers whisked me back into the hotel, and I sat down and I closed my eyes and I looked around, and I could see these two little girls who must have been beautiful little girls, but when I saw them, they were grotesque because these little girls were on a wagon train crossing that part of Arizona going west. And this little girl had a feeling that the Indians, she called them the Indians, not Native Americans. That was a modern term. She had the feeling they were coming, and no one would believe her. And when they did in fact come, they surrounded the wagon train. The wagon train got in the iconic circle, and slowly but surely all of the members of the wagon train died. And this little girl, through her eyes, I could see everything that had happened in that moment. It's like I went back through the stacks of time, and this entire scenario was shown to me. She and her sister were scalped, so they were a bloody mess. Their pretty gingham clothes, even though they might have been soiled, were unrecognizable. And the shock of her sister, who became completely catatonic when she saw this brave coming at her, it's like part of her died in that moment. And these children didn't want to cross over because they believed they should warn everyone coming this way. And this little girl had been trying to warn all of these modern day people to be careful because it was dangerous. And she didn't know that time had passed. She didn't know she was dead, but her desire to prevent this from happening to someone else was jaw-dropping to me.
Yeah.
And I brought in angels for each of them, and I wrapped this golden blanket around their shoulders, which stops the action of their death and starts to shift their frequency so that the transition into that light is much smoother, and it's a beautiful feeling. Mm-hmm. And she says, "Thank you, light lady. Thank you, light lady." She said, "Everybody will be safe now. You promised me." And I said, "Yes, sweetie, they will be safe now. I've taken care of that." She said, okay. And even children can be focused on the service of others, even in their darkest moment.
Yeah.
I think that just speaks volumes.
It does.
So I have a jillion stories, so I can
yeah. Well, no, I'd like to hear some more. So that was one telling one of a child. Did you have any other stories that are like that? Of spirits being helpful and then causing themselves to be locked into a time loop of sorts?
There was one of the most heroic ghosts I ever met. Was a woman named Helen Stanton. And I was asked to clear a condominium in Virginia Beach, Virginia, on the East Coast of the United States. And the owner said, "I think I have a ghost here, but whoever this ghost is not mean. But I think it's time for the ghost to go." It's like, okay. So I reviewed her place, and there is this woman, and she is just covered in blood. And she says, "What took you so long?" I'm looking around like, did I miss a memo here? She said, "What took you so long? I've been waiting for you." And I said, I'm sorry. Honestly, I came as quickly as I could. And she said, "I need help with these men." And I said, "What men?" And she said, "It's the Civil War. Don't you know? Look at all of these dead men. I know I'm dead. These poor dumb guys, they have no idea they're dead. I can't cross them over with me, and I can't leave because I won't leave them. They need me." And there were 200 Civil War soldiers.
Yeah.
And I don't think she cared. I certainly don't care what side they were on. They were dead. They needed help. And she would not cross that light bridge until every single one of them had been cared for. And she said, "Are you sure everyone's cared for?" She said, "Is this country ever going to be united?" And I said, "Yes, yes, I promise you, it is united." And she said, "You mean I can rest now?" I said, "Yes, you can rest now." I almost started crying. It was so, her dedication to in the service of others was just remarkable to me. And she was so grateful to feel the light. It just filled her face and this relaxation in her body. I've seen ghosts who are in wheelchairs. They didn't know they didn't need to be in a wheelchair anymore. And when an angel lifted them up and enabled them to cross the light bridge, this wonder would cross their faces. People who have been in so much suffering, they've been in such terrible pain. When you put that cloak around them, it's like you turn the pain off. And this healing light penetrates the depth of their soul and moves. It's like it moves them into this place of peace. And I want to back up just a little bit and remind people that in our Father's house are many mansions. So if someone has done drive-by shootings, which we certainly have in this country, I hope you don't have in your country, they've murdered people or they dropped bombs and killed hundreds of people. The karma the person created goes with that soul, part of their Akashic records. And they're earning karma as a ghost. When you cross them over, the karmic clock stops. So that chapter of that life is closed. But if you're a ghost for 200 years and you're influencing the living, even through stacks of time, mainly not as a criticism, you're still incurring karma until you have crossed that light bridge, and then that chapter's closed.
Right.
So you go to the place in the heaven world based on your frequency and the karma you have accumulated from that most recent life. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it makes sense. Definitely. Now, when you talk about the angel coming to help you, do you have any specific angels for yourself that turn up often? Any named angels, or is it just a generic angel being?
I don't name angels.
Name
I know a lot of people have certain ones that they use.
Yes.
I have a team that works with me. That it's a private team, but I perform due diligence, so I know who's with me.
Yes.
And I'm a field agent. I mean, that's probably the best way I can describe what I am. I'm just somebody's field agent. Mm-hmm. And when I need their assistance, I mean, it's there. If I had a divorce attorney who died of breast cancer in the space of like 3 months. I mean, bam, this woman was dead. And she was one of the most effective and popular divorce attorneys in her city. And she didn't believe that she deserved to be crossed over because she had been the architect of managing so many divorces. And I found out about her because a friend of mine whose a divorce attorney she was said, my divorce attorney's haunting me. You have to cross her over. So it's like, okay, it's only 7:00 in the morning, but I'll get to work. And here's this woman who is just so guilty. I don't deserve that light. You think you're going to send me across. Well, you're not, because I don't deserve it. And I said, what happened to you? Sometimes divorce is the right answer. Sometimes the karma between two people is over. It's the best thing for all concerned.
Yeah.
No, you know how many children cried in my office, and I made their lives hell because I finalized the divorce, and it's my fault. And so in that case, a large angel coming in toward her, she recoiled in horror that it's like she felt that she was spiritually dirty.
Right.
It's the only way I can describe it. Guilt will seek punishment, and the punishment was the death by her breast cancer. She didn't deserve to be happy. Her heart was so sad and guilty. So I brought in a pair of child angels, and I had an angel slip their hands in her hands. And as soon as you have contact with an angel, everything shifts.
Yes.
It's remarkable how effective this is. And these children looked up at her with gorgeous eyes, and they could transmit the energy of love through their hands. And when she looked down at them, something began to shift inside of her. And I waited, you're patient a little bit. And I said, you get to talk to the beings on the other side. There are counselors of divine wisdom. There are hospitals that will help you with the sadnesses and the physical and the emotional traumas you have. And you'll be able to discuss the life just lived without judgment. But I think if you go with these adorable little angels, I think you're going to start feeling so much better. She said, I don't deserve this. And she's still saying this as she's crossing over. I don't deserve it.
Wow. Got a lot of karmic load there, it sounds like.
There's a very large karmic load. And I have a lot of clients who, one of my clients said, my mother-in-law died. And I said, okay. And she said, I know she's with all of us all the time. So I worked with her, and we found her mother-in-law. And I said, why didn't you cross over? You went to church 5 days a week and twice on Sundays. You were a good Christian. By every measurement you might measure a good Christian. Your family loved you. Well, I was born in sin and I died in sin. God couldn't love me. And I said, but you studied the love and generosity of Christ. The message of Christ is nothing but love and the beauty of that love. And she said, God couldn't love me. I couldn't possibly be deserving. And she kept saying that even as we crossed her over. Even if the soul says, I don't want to go, I shouldn't go, once I have assigned an angel, they really have no choice. And I've had people fight me on it. It's like, give it up.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be intimidated by this.
Yes.
I had one woman who was she owned a saloon, a Western bar. I don't know, it was Colorado. I don't remember where she was.
Right.
And killing somebody, it's like, she'd kill somebody and then go serve somebody a drink. I mean, she just was super hard edged would be the word. And somebody shot her and she had no idea she was dead. And she says, my say-so says I'm not crossing over because I'm going to stay right here and do what I want to do. And there's nothing you can do about it. And I said, well, my say-so trumps yours. So yes, you're going to leave because you're haunting the couple in this apartment and they don't appreciate it. So She says, well, I guess I am a little tired. All right, bye. I mean, that was it.
Yeah. Wow. It does sound like you've actually made a lot of, for the want of different sort of words, like friends of spirits as they've crossed over. So you've made a lot of connections with spirits on the other side. You've made a lot of connections for those spirits to help them cross over as well. Have you ever had any spirits come back to you to visit?
There's spiritual law that applies to this.
Yes.
If you have crossed that light bridge, you do not get to come back as a ghost ever, because the whole point of crossing over is to break the attachment with the living.
Right.
It facilitates the grief process, and it enables the living to continue without interference from a ghost. You are able to attend your memorial or your funeral, and you are escorted by an angel, and you can visit your loved one in a dream. And as an example, my brother died in 2017, and I knew he was going to be dying. There wasn't anything I was going to be able to do to stop that. But as he's preparing to die, I set him up so that it's the moment of death was an instant crossover, and it was. 7 days later, I had his memorial at the Directors Guild in Hollywood. I had a big auditorium, and because I had a lot of people who knew him, he was a very well known in the behind the scenes areas.
Right.
And as we're going through the memorial, and we did a whole video montage of his life, and it was beautifully done. I'm standing in the corner watching, and I can feel he's standing there, and I could see him and his arm. He was standing there with his arm around me. And on the other side of him was his escort angel. And as soon as that was over, he was gone.
Yes.
And then about 2 years later, I had a dream where he was talking to me, and he was wearing the clothes he wore with the cameras and the photography that was his hobby. It was so real. It's like he was trying to let me know something was coming and that I wasn't alone. And there were other things that were happening that were very difficult. And so, yes, you can be visited in a dream, but they can't come often and you wouldn't want it that way. You have to live your life completely without them. That's the lesson. No one goes through life without experiencing grief, whether it's the death of a pet, a parent, a sibling, a relative, a spouse, a child. One of the hardest moments I have ever had, in addition to my brother's death, was my 6-year-old niece sat on the sofa next to my sister, and she said, "Mommy, I feel hot." And she dropped dead right in front of my sister. And she was 6 years old. And she died of group A strep. And it took the coroner 3 days to figure out what killed her. She was in such perfect health. And sometimes it takes that long for the tox screen to come out. And that was 20 years ago this happened. And I was in such shock because she left the body and she's standing with her arm around her sister. And my sister calls me and she said, Ariana hasn't taken a breath in 2 hours. And I'm thinking that would mean she's dead. No, that cannot be real. But I'm remote viewing and finding her, and I can see her in the ER watching them work on her body. And I'm begging her to get back in her body. You don't understand. You have to get back in your body. And she said, "No, Aunt Tina, I'm done. I'm not going back in that body. It's over. I'll just hang out here with my sister." And I was in so much shock because to be able to remote view and to do this, you have to keep your frequency really, really, really high. But when you go through a shock or a trauma, your frequency drops like a rock. And I needed to cross her over, and my brother helped me.
Right.
And I said, Ariana, it's time to go. You can't stay here with your sister. I can't. No, you have to cross over. I brought in 2 children angels, and they crossed her over, and her grandfather met her. He had died 2 years prior, and he got down on bended knee, and it was one of the most remarkable visuals I was allowed to see.
Yeah.
I usually don't get to see that part. It's none of my business, really. But in this case, I was allowed to see that just for the briefest of moments. And then the scene closed. And then I had to grieve. I had to begin my own grief process.
Well, that would have been
So,
very,
and
very
she
hard.
helps me with dead children. And I've certainly seen that. This week, we have been crossing over the children who died in the Lahaina fires in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And they died so suddenly, and it's a horrific death that it's been having to work several days to work through that. This is beyond what anyone has any idea really happened. And I'm hoping that prayers for Maui will be felt and heard, because there is at least 1,000 dead that they haven't even begun to find. These people were cremated, which is highly unusual for a brush fire. I mean, I lived in California for 30 years, and brush fires leave skeletal remains. They don't cremate you like this. So it's been a very unusual event.
Very unusual event for sure. And prayers out there for all the souls that need some help. So you do have helpers that do come through and help you, and as you say, it's your niece. She's helped with other children. Do you have other helpers that come through and help you as well, and besides the angels?
It's primarily the angels. Every now and then, I have somebody at a little bit higher rank will provide guidance before I'm supposed to do something difficult.
Okay.
And again, I'm kind of private about who that is or what they do.
Oh, sure.
But I listen very carefully, and when you're remote viewing or you're doing something, you're being watched by the higher realms, because if you have that skill set at that level, you are expected to follow spiritual law. And that's a very important thing to understand. Mm-hmm. And I wanted my niece to live, with all my heart, but I did not have the power to force her back in her body. Her death was supposed to happen at that point in time. And then over time, she has I'll be working with someone, and we're removing thousands of children. And I mean, especially the children in the human trafficking trade. We have, thousands and thousands of children have been killed. And I'll say, how did you find me? Oh, Ariana sent me. Ariana sent us. Ariana helped us. And she was the 6-year-old niece, but on the higher realms, she's someone else. And I won't get to fully appreciate who she is until it's my turn to cross over and my job is done.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't worry who they are as much as making sure that what I'm doing is in accordance with the law, and I'm providing the comfort and the love that soul needs, without any judgment and without any prejudice. Because, for instance, in the story about the wagon train with those little girls, the settlers killed many of those Native Americans and those in the attacking tribe. I crossed them over equally. I brought in angels for every one of those braves who died that day. And several people said, why would you do that? Because one, they're not mine to judge, but everything they knew was being changed. Their lands were being taken, and they felt like they had to defend their home. Who am I to judge anyone's actions in these times that were so hard for everyone? And this was also true for the the Lost Colony in Virginia. There were native tribes, the Lumbee Indians, they believe, helped the original Lost Colony from the 1600s with the first Americans who came. But there were other tribes that were trying to kill them. It was a time of enormous turmoil. So when you communicate between realms, and I know Australia has Aboriginal people who move between realms, which is certainly a pretty sophisticated level of spiritual understanding and skills beyond anything I can do. I do what I'm required to do for my job, and I don't go beyond that unless it's something I'm absolutely directed to do. And I don't ask spirit. I know who I'm talking to. I'm very careful.
Yeah, that level of discernment must have come over time from experience.
Well, you have to have an understanding of who you're dealing with, because you can be readily fooled. And you have to develop tools that protect you, whether they're things that you're wearing. I was in England for a month and I felt like I was at, Ghost Central. I mean, from the Battle of Hastings in 1066, there have been ghosts in England, and long before that. So everywhere you go, it's a bombardment. And I was working every day I was there. So I then after that developed a certain system. So if you have listeners who feel like they're ghost magnets,
yes,
I would like, if it's all right, I'd like to offer a tool that anyone can use that would be really helpful for people who, I know there are people who feel they're empaths and they feel ghosts around them. They're not sure what to do. Try this tool. If you visualize, let me grab this little piece of crystal. This little piece of crystal is a tetrahedron. It is 3 sides and a base. It's one of the most powerful shapes in the spiritual world. So if you visualize that you're inside a triangle, you put a big angel in front of you and an angel on either shoulder, and you move through a crowd that way. You have to visualize, you have to practice the visualization. And the direction you give the angel is to cross over everyone who crosses your path. Period. It is elegantly simple. I mean, hospitals used to be hell for me.
Right.
And one of my brothers was ill, and my other brother said, for God's sake, figure it out. You're really good at this. I have to leave now. And he left. And I thought, I got to come up with a way. And then I remembered how powerful a tetrahedron is. And so whenever I have to go into a large crowd or an angry crowd, you're moving through with these mighty angels. You're going to calm the crowd. And any dead who are with people in a crowd, I mean, go to a shopping mall or a big shopping center, and there's a lot of ghosts with people. They don't even realize it. You have no idea who you're going to be helping. They're going to cross over every single soul that crosses your path. You will have done enormous spiritual service. It's great. And I have these things called crossing over prayer cards that are available on ghosthelpers.com. I keep those in my purse, my car, my luggage. Every purse I have cards. Well, they open up a doorway and all these ghosts just go through, and they don't bother me at all anymore. I don't even have to do the triangle. Or for someone just starting, or you have to be in a hospital, or you have a psychic child in a hospital, oh my gosh, do that for your child. It's a torture if you can't.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Otherwise they get too much attention.
They get bombarded. They absolutely do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the spirits, when they think they've got an ear, they'll talk.
Yes, they do. They do.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the questions that would be good to know is that it doesn't matter what faith you do or don't believe in. There is no religion in the afterlife. There's just God. There's the blessing of Christ consciousness. There's the joy and the love of the Buddha nature, and all of the wonderful beings who have walked the earth in peace and in love. That's what is in the heaven world. If you are an atheist, it's going to be the same thing for you, whether you believe it or not. If you're a minister who doesn't believe in ghosts, it's going to be the same thing. And I've crossed over many a minister who is so shocked at what happened at death.
Yeah, right.
And the only other question that would be good for people to know is what happens when you die? What's the process of death?
Yeah.
So the process is actually simple, whether you die instantaneously, like my niece, or you have a long, slow death, like my brother.
Yeah.
And it is that all the vital systems shut down. And this is elegantly described in the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I want your listeners to know where this information comes from. It's not original with me.
Oh.
The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying is brilliant at this. And having watched it firsthand, it's absolutely accurate. As the body shuts down, all the vital systems shut down. And you are connected to everything you've ever known through Akka cords, or this thin blue cord that comes out of your solar plexus. You are connected to mortal life through something called the silver cord that comes out of the heart and up through the head. When you die, your Akka cords are cut, which is why people who feel your death feel nauseated, because it comes through your solar plexus. Mm-hmm. And the silver cord is cut, and you are no longer going to be part of the living. The seed atom of the soul lives in the heart, and the records of all you've known or been to or touched are recorded through the Akka cords, which represent the Akashic, aka the Akashic records of the soul. And then that soul separates from the mortal frame like a butterfly leaving a cocoon and moves into the fourth dimension. We live in the third dimension, the place of time and space and gravity. But the fourth dimension has no time, no space, and no gravity. There's nothing that grounds you. You don't know how long you've been there. I've had ghosts say, "You mean I've been dead for 400 years? Yeah, I'm really sorry." It's how it works. And if your frequency is low and all you see is darkness, then you don't see the light when it comes, or if you see the light when it comes, you don't know what you're supposed to do. So when the light comes, move into the light as quickly as you possibly can. One of the best depictions I've ever seen is the 1990s movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, and Whoopi Goldberg. And at the very end of the film, Patrick Swayze says, "There's so much love. There's so much light, you just can't believe it." That is the most accurate movie scene ever, because that is exactly what it looks like. So much love, so much healing light. And if we all understood that, we wouldn't be afraid of death, and we would enjoy life far more. So when you cross over a soul, remember, it's the compassion you will want for yourself. And remember, if you die tomorrow, now you know what to do.
Exactly. And that's a perfect point to end. And I think, Tina, that was brilliant. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge and your wealth of experience and all the work that you're doing for the living and the recently past and the long past. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated.
Thank you so much for having me.
Whoa, what a show. That was really, really interesting. And wow, the work Tina has done with the spirits and as a guide to spirits, to helping them to reintegrate and change their frequencies up to get them onto the right path is astounding. And look, I'll provide that link to all of her information so you can research more. And I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. So thank you again, listeners, for listening, and I look forward to having you back listening next week. And until then, bye for now.